The crash and first contact, the void of space, stretched endlessly in all directions as Captain Marcus Chen performed his final systems check aboard the exploration vessel Horizon's Edge. 3 years into his deep space mission, he had grown accustomed to the loneliness that came with solo exploration assignments. At 34, Marcus was one of Earth's youngest deep space captains, chosen for this mission specifically because of his ability to maintain psychological stability. During extended isolation, the planet below him, designated Zarian 7, appeared as a dull grey sphere against the black canvas of space. Initial scans had shown it was within the habitable zone of its star, with breathable atmosphere and suitable gravity, but completely devoid of life. It was the kind of world that puzzled xenobiologists back on Earth. Everything suggested it should be teeming with life. Yet the surface appeared as barren as a moon. Marcus initiated the descent sequence, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls with practiced precision. The ship shuddered slightly as it entered the planet's atmosphere, and he frowned at the readings on his display. The atmospheric composition was stranger than the initial long-range scans had indicated. There were trace elements he couldn't identify, and the electromagnetic readings were all wrong. A warning alarm pierced the relative quiet of the cockpit. Marcus's training kicked in immediately as he scanned the emergency displays. His heart sank as he read the diagnostics. The ship's main power coupling was overloading, likely due to some kind of electromagnetic interference from the planet below. He had maybe 10 minutes before complete system failure. The ship bucked violently as another coupling blew out, throwing Marcus against his restraints. Emergency lighting bathed the cockpit in red as system after system began failing in cascade. Through the viewports, he could see the planet's surface rushing up to meet him faster than his failing engines could compensate for. Marcus fought with the controls, trying to find a safe landing zone. The planet's surface was a maze of jagged rock formations and deep canyons. Finally, he spotted what looked like a relatively flat area between two ridgelines. It would have to do. The impact was tremendous. Even with his safety harness and the ship's inertial dampeners, Marcus felt like he'd been hit by a freight train. His head rang, and he tasted blood in his mouth. Sparks showered from damaged control panels, and the acrid smell of burning electronics filled the air. Silence settled over the wreckage like a heavy blanket. Marcus took inventory of his condition. His left shoulder ached terribly, probably dislocated. His ribs were bruised, but didn't feel broken. More importantly, he was alive. The ship's life support systems were failing rapidly. Marcus could hear the atmospheric processors struggling and knew he had perhaps hours before the air became unbreathable. His emergency suit would give him maybe 6 more hours after that. Not nearly enough time for any rescue mission to reach. This remote system, gathering his emergency supplies, Marcus sealed his suit and cycled through the airlock. The planet's surface was even more desolate than it had appeared from orbit. The ground beneath his feet was hard-packed dirt, the color of old bone, cracked and dry as if it hadn't seen rain in centuries. Strange rock formations jutted from the earth like the ribs of some massive, long-dead creature. The atmosphere was breathable according to his suit's sensors, but thin. He would need to move carefully to avoid exhaustion. Marcus looked back at his ship, noting the trail of debris that marked his violent arrival. Something glinted in the distance, catching his attention. As he crested a low rise, Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. There, partially hidden behind a cluster of twisted metal spires, lay the wreckage of another ship. But this vessel was clearly not of human origin. Its design was organic, flowing, as if it had been grown rather than built. The hull gleamed with an opalescent quality that seemed to shift colors as he moved. Marcus approached cautiously, his hand instinctively moving to the emergency sidearm at his hip. First contact protocols ran through his mind, but they seemed woefully inadequate for this situation. He was stranded, possibly dying, on an alien world, face to face with technology from another species. The alien ship was larger than his own vessel, but appeared to have crashed even more violently. Sections of the hull had been torn open, revealing interior chambers that glowed with a soft, pulsing light. As Marcus drew closer, he heard something that made his blood run cold, a low, rhythmic sound that was definitely organic in nature. Through one of the breached sections, Marcus could see movement. Something was alive in there. Every instinct screamed at him to retreat, to put distance between himself and whatever alien presence inhabited that ship. But another part of him, the part that had driven him to become an explorer in the first place, urged him forward. He was possibly witnessing one of the most significant moments in human history: actual contact with alien intelligence. Marcus peered through the opening in the hull and gasped. Inside, slumped against what appeared to be some kind of organic control surface, was a being unlike anything he had ever imagined. It was roughly humanoid in basic structure, but clearly alien. Tall and slender, with elongated limbs that ended in hands bearing for delicate fingers. Its skin had a luminescent quality, pale and seemingly translucent, with veins of soft blue light visible beneath the surface. Most striking were its eyes. Large and almond-shaped, they seemed to contain entire galaxies of swirling color. Currently, those eyes were dim with pain, and Marcus could see that the being was injured. Dark, viscous fluid seeped from wounds along its torso and arms. The creature's head turned toward him, and Marcus found himself looking directly into those extraordinary eyes. For a moment, time seemed suspended. He saw fear there, yes, but also intelligence. This was no mere animal. This was a sentient being, as lost and afraid as he was. Despite every protocol and safety consideration, Marcus holstered his weapon and stepped into the alien ship. The being watched him warily but didn't try to flee or attack. Instead, it seemed to be studying him with the same curiosity he felt. The interior of the ship was like nothing Marcus had ever seen. The walls seemed to pulse with bioluminescent light, and the air carried a strange, ozone-like scent. Technology and biology seemed seamlessly integrated, as if the ship were as much a living thing as a machine. Marcus knelt beside the injured alien, pulling out his emergency medical kit. He gestured to the supplies, then pointed to the being's wounds, trying to communicate his peaceful intentions. The alien tilted its head, studying him with those mesmerizing eyes. Then something extraordinary happened. Marcus felt a gentle pressure in his mind, like a whisper at the edge of consciousness. Images flashed through his thoughts. The alien's ship fleeing from some terrible disaster in space. The crash, pain, and growing weakness. But underlying it all was surprise. The alien hadn't expected kindness from a stranger. Working slowly and carefully, Marcus began to clean the alien's wounds. Its skin felt warm and had a subtle texture unlike anything on Earth. With each touch, he noticed the being's bioluminescent patterns grew slightly brighter, as if responding to his presence. As he worked, Marcus found himself thinking of the being as female, though he couldn't say why. Something in those expressive eyes, perhaps, or the graceful way she moved despite her injuries. She began to make soft sounds, melodic and clearly communicative, though unlike any language he knew. Over the following hours, they established a basic form of communication. Marcus would point to objects and say their English names, while she would respond with sounds that seemed to carry emotional weight beyond mere words. Water became Vithela, accompanied by a mental impression of cool streams and gentle rain. Food became Nephis, carrying the warm satisfaction of nourishment and shared meals. More remarkably, Marcus began to sense her emotions directly. Her gratitude felt like warm sunlight on his face. Her loneliness resonated with his own, creating a deep well of understanding between them. When she looked at him, he caught glimpses of something that made his chest tight with an emotion he couldn't name, as the alien planet's strange, pale sun set on the horizon. Casting long shadows across the desolate landscape, Marcus realized something had fundamentally changed. He was no longer alone in the universe. Neither was she. The being, whom he had begun thinking of as Zara, after hearing her whisper what sounded like a name, had grown stronger throughout the day. Her wounds were healing with remarkable speed, and the bioluminescent patterns in her skin had grown brighter and more complex. Most surprisingly, Marcus had begun to notice something happening outside the ship, where there had been only barren, lifeless soil before. Tiny green shoots were beginning to push through the cracked earth. It was impossible, of course. This planet had been dead for who knew how long. But as Marcus looked out at the slowly growing patches of vegetation, he couldn't shake the feeling that somehow their presence together was causing this miraculous change. As they settled down to rest in the alien ship's warm, pulsing chambers, Marcus felt Zara's contentment wrapping round his consciousness like a gentle embrace. For the first time since his crash, he felt something other than fear and desperation. He felt hope. The awakening and transformation. Marcus woke to find Zara sitting beside him, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing in slow, rhythmic waves. Through their growing mental connection, he sensed her excitement mixed with something like wonder. She gestured toward the opening in the ship's hull, and Marcus followed her gaze. What he saw took his breath away. Where yesterday there had been nothing but barren rock and dust, now a carpet of vibrant green vegetation stretched across the landscape. Flowers in colors he had no names for dotted the new growth, and in the distance he could see what looked like the beginnings of trees pushing up from the soil. "This is impossible," Marcus whispered, but even as he said it, he felt Zara's gentle correction flowing through their link. Not impossible. Sleeping, the concept came accompanied by images of a world in hibernation, waiting for the right catalyst to awaken over the past week. Their communication had evolved far beyond simple gestures and emotions. Marcus found he could now access some of Zara's memories, while she seemed to understand his thoughts almost before he formed them. Through this deepening bond, he had learned her incredible story. Zara was not just any member of her species, the Lumina. She was their harmony keeper, one of a rare few born with the ability to sense and nurture the emotional connections between all living things. Her people had sent her on a desperate mission to find new worlds where their dying race might find refuge. The dark nebula that had consumed her home system was expanding, and the Luminari had perhaps decades before their remaining worlds would be consumed. Her ship had been damaged, while escaping the gravitational pull of a collapsing star, forcing her to make an emergency landing on Zerion 7. She had expected to die alone on this dead world, but then Marcus had found her. Through their connection, Marcus shared his own story. Earth's desperate need for new resources and living space. the loneliness of deep space exploration, his childhood dreams of discovering new worlds and making contact with alien civilizations, the crushing weight of responsibility he felt as humanity's representative among the stars. But it was more than their stories that bound them together. Something profound was happening between their minds. Something that Zara's people had legends about, but had never actually witnessed. She called it Catholan, the joining of spirits across species barriers. It was said to be so rare that it occurred perhaps once in 1,000 generations. As their bond deepened, the transformation of Zarian 7 accelerated. What had started as patches of grass and flowers was becoming a full ecosystem. Streams began flowing where none had existed before. The air grew richer and more breathable. Most remarkably, Marcus began to sense other consciousness awakening across the planet. "There are others," he said one morning, his hand pressed against the ship's living wall. Through the vessel's organic sensors, he could feel the stirring of minds long dormant. Zara's excitement flowed through their link as she shared an incredible revelation. Zarian 7 hadn't always been dead. Millennia ago, it had been home to a species called the Vethani, beings of pure emotional energy who existed in perfect harmony with their world. But something had gone wrong. The Vethani had become isolated, cut off from contact with other species, and their world had gradually died from loneliness itself. The planet's consciousness had fallen into a deep sleep, waiting for what the legends called the Great Awakening, the moment when beings from different worlds would come together in true harmony, proving that connection could transcend the barriers between species. Marcus and Zara were that proof. As the days passed, they began to encounter the awakening Vethani. These beings appeared as shimmering, translucent forms that communicated entirely through emotion and shared experience. They were overjoyed to discover that their long wait was over, that life had returned to their world through the bond between two lost souls from distant stars. The Vethani showed them incredible things. Cities that grew from the living rock itself, powered by the collective emotions of their inhabitants. Gardens where plants responded to the gardener's moods, blooming in colors that matched their feelings. Art that existed not as physical objects, but as shared experiences passed from mind to mind. But with the planet's awakening came new challenges. The rapid ecological changes created unstable weather patterns. Storms of incredible intensity swept across the surface as the world's atmosphere adjusted to its new state. Marcus and Zara found themselves working together to survive these upheavals, their different skills and knowledge complementing each other perfectly. Marcus's human ingenuity and technical knowledge helped them navigate the dangerous weather and construct shelter. Zara's ability to sense the emotional rhythms of the planet allowed them to predict and prepare for the worst storms. Together, they were far stronger than either could have been alone. It was during one particularly violent storm that they made another breakthrough. Huddled together in the depths of the alien ship while hurricane-force winds raged outside, Marcus and Zara's connection deepened to the point where the boundaries between their individual consciousness began to blur. For a few incredible moments, Marcus experienced the universe through Zara's senses. He felt the living pulse of every plant and animal on the planet. He sensed the vast network of connections that linked all life together. Most overwhelming of all, he felt the pure joy radiating from the awakening Vethani as they celebrated the return of life to their world. At the same time, Zara experienced human consciousness for the first time. She marveled at the way mind worked, the logical processes balanced with emotional intuition. She felt his determination, his courage in the face of impossible odds, and the deep well of compassion that had driven him to help her despite every rational reason to be afraid. When they separated back into their individual selves, both were forever changed. They understood now that what was happening on Zarian 7 was bigger than just them. It was proof that consciousness could evolve beyond the limitations of single species, that the universe itself might be growing towards some greater form of awareness. 3 months after their first meeting, rescue ships finally arrived. Marcus's emergency beacon had eventually been detected by a long-range Earth patrol, while the Luminari had traced Zara's last known position. Both species were astonished by what they found. Zarian 7 was now a thriving world, its surface covered with bizarre but beautiful hybrid ecosystems that seemed to combine the best features of multiple evolutionary paths. The Vithani had emerged from their long slumber and were eager to share their knowledge with the newcomers. Most shocking of all was the obvious bond between Marcus and Zara. Even the most skeptical scientists from both species couldn't deny the evidence of their telepathic connection or the role it had played in the planet's transformation. Captain Sarah Rodriguez, Marcus's commanding officer, stared at the data reports in disbelief. "Chen, do you understand what you've accomplished here? This isn't just first contact. You've proven that consciousness itself can evolve through cooperation between species." Dr. Kethatal, the lead Luminari scientist, was equally amazed. "Young Harmony Keeper, the legends spoke of this possibility, but we never dared believe it could be real. You have given both our peoples hope for a future we never imagined." But despite the excitement of their respective species, Marcus and Zara faced a difficult choice. The humans wanted to establish a research colony on Zarian 7, with Marcus as the first ambassador to the Vethany. The Luminari wanted Zara to return and share her experiences with the Harmony Council, to help prepare their people for this new era of interspecies cooperation. They could serve their people separately, on different worlds, maintaining their connection across the void of space. Or they could choose to stay together and continue the work they had started, helping to build the first truly integrated multi-species civilization, standing together on a hilltop, overlooking the thriving landscape they had helped to awaken. Marcus and Zara made their choice. Through their bond, the decision was instantaneous and unanimous. "We stay," Marcus announced to both rescue teams. "This world, these people, the Vethany, they need guides who understand what true cooperation looks like. And frankly, so do both our species." Zara's agreement rippled through the minds of every sensitive individual in both groups, carrying with it the warm certainty of absolute truth. The establishment of New Harmony, as the joint colony came to be called, marked the beginning of a new era for all three species. The Vethany shared their emotional technologies, teaching humans and Luminari how to build cities that responded to the needs and feelings of their inhabitants. The Luminari contributed their understanding of biological engineering, helping to create sustainable ecosystems that supported all forms of life. Humans brought their adaptability and drive to explore, pushing the boundaries of what was possible when species worked together. Marcus and Zara became the first Harmony ambassadors, their unique bond serving as both symbol and foundation for the growing alliance. They traveled between worlds, teaching others how to form the deep connections that made true cooperation possible. Years later, as they stood together watching the sunset over New Harmony, Marcus marveled at how much had changed. The dead world where they had first met was now home to millions of beings from dozens of species, all living in the kind of harmony that had once seemed impossible. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked Sarah. Their words unnecessary, but spoken anyway for the simple pleasure of communication. Her answer came not in words, but in the warm glow of absolute contentment that flowed through their bond. Around them, the lights of the city began to pulse in rhythm with their shared heartbeat. And in the distance, the first ships of a new interstellar alliance prepared to carry their message of cooperation to the stars. The universe was no longer a lonely place, thanks to two stranded souls who had chosen connection over fear. Consciousness itself was evolving, one bond at a time. Asterisk.